Hi Kim, here's your review for exam 3. Okay, here's a slope problem. Ignore the cursor. I took a picture of my computer screen and forgot to move the cursor. What you want to know first is that this is a negative slope. It goes downhill from left to right. You had a very similar problem and you chose a positive slope, so you forgot to check by just looking at the graph. And then to find slope, you can do it two ways. You can pick 2 points on the graph. I'm going to pick this one, and let's go to this one just to get distance so we can illustrate for a harder problem. You can choose those points and say, well, x equals -2, y equals 3. There goes my phone. And on the other one, you could say x equals 4, y equals 0, and then you can use the slope formula that m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But on a problem like this, I find it easier to start at the leftmost point and then count to the rightmost point. So your rise is going to be negative. You're actually falling 1, 2, 3. So that's a -3. And your run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have -3 over 6. Let's see, we'll put that here. And then you have to reduce it. So 3 goes into 6 2 times. And then you get m equals -1/2. You got an unusual denominator in your slope, and it's as if you took maybe this value and then you counted down to this value here, or something like that. This is a slightly different problem, so you had a different answer, but anyway, this is the correct answer for a problem like this. And this one you're to graph by plotting points. Your graph was the correct graph if it had a negative slope. The correct answer had a positive slope, but yours had a negative slope. In this case, you'll also get a positive slope. If you remember, we said that if it's in the standard form, something times x plus something times y equals something, then let's rewrite it like that. You would have -5x plus 2y if you move things around. Then we said that if you take this number, -5, and this number, 2, and you take the negative of -5 over 2, you'll get your slope. Now you certainly don't have to do that this way, but it was a shortcut you were considering, and it's a good check to see if you have a positive or negative slope. In this case, you have a positive slope. But let's forget what I just did in case it's just confusing, and go on. We are going to use this version of the equation, and we're going to plot points. So I'm clearing up the other stuff, and we're going to choose values of x and y to give us our line, to give us points. Now, also remember, when we were studying lines, when we were tutoring, that when this and this equals 0, it means the line's going to go through the origin, right there. So if you plug in 0 for x, you're going to get 0 for y. And you can go ahead and pause the video and do that, so you'll see that that is correct. So we can go ahead and write this. And then let's say if x is 1, what would y be? And so we'll write it in pink. 2y minus 5 times 1 is 5. So let's add 5 to both sides. And we get 2y equals 5. and then we'll divide both sides by 2, and y equals 5/2. Now, in the ones they're going to show you, you're not going to end up with a fraction. And since I don't want to graph a fraction, I'm going to reject 1, and I'm going to use y equals 2. I mean x equals 2. So instead of x equals 1, we're going to use x equals 2. So we have 2y minus 5 times 2 equals 0. Add 10 to both sides, and you get 2y equals 10, and when you divide both sides by 2, you get that y equals 5. So another point is 2 and 5. And since we now have 2 points and we can graph the line, but let's go ahead and do one more point so that we can make sure our graph is correct. Okay, so let's choose x equals 4, and we get 2y minus 5 times 4, 2y minus 20, 2y equals 20 by adding 20 to both sides, and then when you divide both sides by 2, you get that y equals 10. So here's the first point, 0, 0. Let me do that in blue. And then the second point is x equals 2, y equals 5. And then the third point is x equals 4, and y is going to be way up here. So on this particular problem, that was a hard point to choose, and if we had chosen negative 2 for x, we would have gotten a better point. And I'll let you work that out if we choose x equals negative 2, what y would be, but it turns out that it would be negative 5. And so the plots of all of those points would look like that, and I'll try to draw a line through there, and didn't. That one's better. Fortunately for you, you have your graphing tool, so it won't be so hard. So in this case, you have a positive slope, which checks out from what we originally said, and in your case, you had the right points, except you had a mirror image of the correct answer. You had a problem similar to this on your exam. You have to graph the equation using the slope and y-intercept. So to do that, we need to convert the equation to slope-intercept form. So first, let's subtract 2x because we want the y term on the left by itself. And we get minus 3y equals minus 2x plus 3. And then we divide by negative 3 so that we can have y by itself. And we get y equals 2/3 x minus, because 3 over negative 3 is going to be a negative, and then 3 over 3 is 1, so that's what it's going to be. So you go to your, let me rewrite underneath it, here's the slope-intercept form, so that we know that b is 1, or it's plus b. b is negative 1 in our case. So we plot on the y-axis negative 1, or the point 0, negative 1. And then m is going to be 2/3. So from our point negative 1, we count up 1, 2, and over 1, 2, 3, and plot that point. And with those 2 points, we can draw a line. And we have accomplished this problem. In your answer, the problem on the exam was a little different, but it was the same procedure. But your answer differed a great deal from the correct answer. The correct answer also had a negative slope and your answer had a positive slope. So always check your slope. In this one we're going to graph by finding the intercepts. So to find the intercepts, we set x to 0 first and then set y to 0 second. Okay, so we have minus 5y equals minus 10, and dividing both sides by negative 5, we get y equals positive 2. So our first point is going to be 0, 2. So we go to x equals 0, y equals 2, and obviously that's our y-intercept. Now we go back to the original equation up here, and we are going to let y equal 0 this time and solve for x. So we have x minus 5 times 0 equals negative 10, so that means x equals negative 10. So our x-intercept is going to be negative 10, 0, because y is 0. So that's going to be out here somewhere, and when I moved things around I lost my point for the first one. So the y-intercept is here and the x-intercept is out here, and our line is going to look something like that, only straighter. Your line was this. I'm not sure how you got that, unless when you plugged in your second equation, I mean you found your y-intercept here, and then you went back to this equation and plugged 0 in for y or something. Maybe that's how you got it, but you need to always go back to this equation. So this line here is incorrect. In this problem, you're only given half of the ordered pair. You're given something for x, which we don't know, and you're given negative 9 for y. So you're given an equation, y equals 7x minus 3. To complete the ordered pair, you have to plug in negative 9 for y. So we have negative 9 equals 7x minus 3. And then if we add 3 to both sides, and we do that because we want the 7x term by itself, we get negative 6 equals 7x, and then we divide both sides by 7, and we get negative 6 sevenths equals x. So the ordered pair we're looking for is negative 6 sevenths, negative 9. Okay, find the slope if it exists, and I'm going to do two cases. One is x equals negative 4, and 2 is y equals 2, because I want to demonstrate what a zero slope looks like and what an undefined slope looks like. So you know that these are going to be either vertical or horizontal lines. The best way to remember which is which is to draw a graph. Find x equals negative 4 for the first one, and then you want x to equal negative 4 everywhere on the line. If we look at this point here, x does not equal negative 4, so that won't work. But if we look at this point here, it doesn't matter what y is, x will always equal negative 4 on this vertical line. Okay, so we know this is going to be a vertical line. And so what's the slope of a vertical line? If you can't remember that, think of a roof. If the roof stands up straight like this, it doesn't make sense. It won't keep out the rain. So that's going, if it doesn't make sense, we'll call it undefined. So a vertical line is undefined. I'll do the next in pink. If y equals 2, we plot 2 on the y-axis, and here it is. And then we look for everywhere that y is 2. If we try a point up here, y will be 3. If we try a point down here, y will be 1. So those won't work. But anywhere over here, as long as y is 2, All of those points are going to be on the line, so we have a horizontal line. And a horizontal line, if you think of a roof, you have a flat roof here, so it will cover the house, and but it has no pitch to it, and so that means your slope is 0. So you had these two backwards on the exam. Okay, you are to graph by plotting points. You can do that, or you can just subtract 3 from both sides and say y equals -3. But let's do it as the problem requests. We know that when we don't have an x in the equation, so this may be confusing, but when you don't have an x in the equation, x can be anything. It doesn't matter. So what that tells you is you actually have to solve the equation for y. So you would subtract 3 from both sides, and that gives you y equals -3. So everywhere on the line, no matter what x is, y is going to be -3. And that's why it might be confusing when you're asked to graph by plotting points. So then you go find y equals -3, and you find every instance where y is -3. You can use your chart even when x is 1, when x is 2, when x is 5, x is 7 is off the chart, and then you just draw a horizontal line through there. The line that you drew was up and down along the y-axis. But this is the correct way to do this problem. Match each equation to the graph that would most probably resemble it. All you have to do is look at slopes and intercepts. All of your equations are in y equals mx plus b form. So let's write here slope. We're going to write a chart where we have the slope and the y-intercept. So for the first equation, the slope is defined by that negative sign. It's going to be -1, and the y-intercept is going to be 0, -3. So in the second case, the slope is 1, but we still have 0, -3. In the third case, again -1, but we have 0. B is 3 this time. And in the fourth case, everything's positive. Okay, so let's look at the y-intercepts for A, for this equation. The y-intercept is 0, -3. This line does not cross the axis in a negative. It crosses here, which is y equals positive something. Here, it's negative, so let's mark this one. That one might be it. And then we look over here, it's positive, but here it's negative, so maybe that's it. Okay, so now we look at our slope here. We are looking for a negative slope. This runs uphill from left to right, so it's a positive slope, so we know that that's not it. But the other possibility, this graph runs downhill from left to right, so it's a negative slope, so that is the correct answer. So the correct answer over here, I'm going to write it in blue, is D. Okay, now our second equation, y equals x minus 3, we've seen has a positive slope and a negative y-intercept. So again, let's look at the y-intercepts. Let me get rid of this one. So x is still -3, and we had already identified that that means it's either this one or this one. But this time the slope is positive, so it has to run uphill from left to right, which this one does. So the answer to equation B is B. Okay. So for this equation, y equals negative x plus 3, we've determined that we have a positive y-intercept, so it's going to be above the x-axis, so it's one of these two. And we've decided our slope has to be negative, which means downhill from left to right. That makes it this one. And then the last one is obviously C, positive slope, runs uphill from left to right. There's the positive slope, and there's the positive y-intercept. So the last one is C. When you worked problems, you correctly identified positive and negative slopes on this problem, but you got the y-intercepts backwards. So be careful about that. I hope this review has helped, but if you have any questions about anything in the review, please let me know. And then go ahead and work on your study plan. It looks like most of the problems are in looking at the graphs correctly, and also in checking to make sure that the slope you got is actually positive or negative in agreement with the graph. So good luck, Kim.